Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our roundtable session this month of March. With us is a very important guest, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. But first, Sean and I are going to introduce ourselves. My name is Melissa Sadorf. I'm the superintendent of the Stanfield Elementary School District in Pinal County, Arizona, and I also serve on the ARSA Executive Board as the president-elect. Sean.
Hey, my name is Sean Rickert, and I'm the superintendent at Pima Unified School District in Graham County, Arizona. And I sit on the executive board of the Rural Schools Association. I am the advocacy coordinator for the association. I also sit on the executive committee of the National Rural Education Association and the governing board of the AASA, the National Superintendents Group. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here with you today and to talk to Mr. Milan Eaton about the Final Mile project. But before we get to that, I guess some housekeeping things you want to run through, Melissa?
Sure. Just a reminder, if you're not speaking, make sure that you stay muted. If you do have a question, feel free to unmute, or you can put them in the chat. We're happy to answer as we go. So please feel free to make this an interactive conversation with both Sean and Milan as they go through the Final Mile project. So Sean, I'm going to kick it over to you, and you can go ahead and take control of the meeting.
All right. I'm going to throw up some slides here because I haven't done one of those in a while. Present. Oh, we can't do it that order. Let's see. So share. Desktop.
And while you're getting that ready to go, Sean, do you want to introduce Milan?
All right. Can everybody see the?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Now I can't see any of you. I forget that's how this works. Okay. So just by way of background, before we get into the meat of it all, back in September, October of 2020. Well, maybe it was even earlier than that. Maybe it was last summer. Anyway, Milan Eaton has been working for years with the Arizona Department of Education on a project to bring quality broadband service to anchors like school districts, but also helping libraries throughout the state of Arizona. And this has given him a tremendous amount of insight into the needs of our state and of rural Arizona and rural schools. He was recognized, I'm trying to think, I was there back in August of 19. He was recognized by the county school superintendents for his tremendous contribution to improving the quality of education and instruction and the tools that we have. So if you're involved with a rural district in Arizona, you probably have benefited from Milan's work if you haven't actually had the opportunity to work with him or talk with him. So we're really glad to be able to work with him on this new project that he really conceived of that has been called the Final Mile project. The goal of it is pretty straightforward, and I'm going to let him kind of share that initial vision that he developed, and then we'll come back to the slides to kind of just kind of run through what it is we're trying to do.
Thanks, Sean. Well, good morning. I appreciate you guys letting me join today. So I worked on the broadband project. We created this in 2017 to take advantage of the new FCC rules to allow the state to contribute up to 10% in our construction costs so we could build fiber to schools. And that's resulted in about $130 million worth of construction projects. And today, most of our rural schools actually have access to high-speed broadband. So, thinking about it, and, we've got another $20 million worth of projects this year that we just submitted for that'll get funded sometime in the next 12 months. And thinking about the next steps, and then the pandemic rolled in this past year, and we're thinking, okay, now our classroom has kind of moved to the home. And what do we do to extend our reach into the home? And our rural schools are typically more financially challenged. So we need to do something to help them. And, you know, if you can afford satellite internet at $200 a month, great, knock yourself out. But most of our rural districts are 80% NSLP, or actually most of our rural schools are 90%, meaning they're high poverty levels. So we need to find a solution that is affordable. And when I say affordable, I mean less than $10 a month affordable. If you're, you know, the FCC put $10 million in a fund, which allows you, you know, rural households to get refunds of $50 a month. Well, and everyone across the country thought that was fantastic. And I was kind of sitting there as the fly in the ointment saying, no, that's a bad thing, guys. Now we're setting the bar at $50 a month for these households, that $50 means food on the table for the, you know, for the week. So that's not a good solution. And once they set the bar at $50 a month, what happens when the money goes away? Because somebody's got to pay the bill long term. So I want to keep it at $10 a month with a long-term solution where we pay for the infrastructure up front, enable these small companies in rural Arizona to grow their business. And that $10 a month is going to be paying for the maintenance of the infrastructure and service of the networks for those companies. Up front, we're going to pay to build a network. So we have, you know, 6 or 7 districts, you know, selected right now through our process, and we're going to build, you know, high-speed broadband to those homes of those students. There's a couple of hundred of them. So Department of Education has given us $1.5 million for our proof of concept. We will put out. Is there a question coming in?
Well, no, I was just going to say, if we can kind of work through the slides here.
Yeah, Sean, you go ahead and go through the slides, because they'll probably describe it much better than I will by talking.
Well, no, I mean, it's just, yeah, there's so much to this.
Yes.
We want our participants to kind of have the opportunity to ask questions, but I also want to make sure that they come away from this with a much better sense for what it means when they hear us talk about the final mile. Because this is, as you know, as Milan mentioned, or if you had a chance to take a look at the most recent issue of the ARSA newsletter, which now has a new name that I forget. There was a piece in there describing the project that I wrote. We want people to understand that the goal is, just like I said, the goal is to provide, kids in homes in rural communities with access to, safe, reliable, robust internet at an affordable price. But what exactly does that involve? So when Milan came to Wes with this project, Wes, was very enthusiastic about it. Wes then brought in, Melissa and Kristen and Robbie and myself, and so we've kind of been building this team. Tim Carter's been a big support in a lot of this, and I know that Frank is on the call, and he's been very involved with helping to make this work. And so and then we, Wes also reached out to Dick Foreman at ABEC, and that's where we've got the partnership with the Yavapai County ESA, ARSA, and ABEC. To those are kind of the 3 anchor institutions making a lot of this happen. So what are we trying to make happen? We know, as Milan mentioned, we know that internet connectivity is becoming essential as we move into the second fifth of the 21st century, and the pandemic has really highlighted how important it is for children to be able to access a high quality education. And so we're trying to find a way to bridge that gap. The mechanism, well, we know that there are three layers of infrastructure to getting the internet connected to home. The first is the backbones, or the long haul connections. The second is the middle mile, and that's what Milan's been working on, like you mentioned, since 2017. creating those bridges between the rural schools and hospitals and libraries and that rural that backbone infrastructure. And then what we're talking about today and what this project is focused on is that last or the final mile, the one that reaches from the anchor institutions to the actual residences in a community. Now, through ongoing broadband development, most rural communities are connected. There's still, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Milan, but I think there's still a general lack of redundancy in the system. It's still very much kind of a foundational or even I can't even think of the word I'm trying to think of. It's a basic system. There's definitely a need to continue to expand it, but there is access in most places, and so that's a huge development over the last half of a decade to get to that point. And that's because we have these anchors in communities. For example, I've got a fiber line that runs through Pima, and it's just past my. Now I still contract with an ISP that connects into that and then provides service, but the town hall is connected directly, and it's those direct connections that we're trying to build as part of the middle mile, and that effort is still ongoing. And you can see here, this kind of a rough map, but it shows, where those main trunk lines are. And you can see, those are the lines that connect Phoenix to San Diego, or Phoenix to Tucson, and Tucson to El Paso. They tend to follow your interstate highways. And then you've got the blue lines, which are more, that middle mile connection that's connecting your local communities to that.
I'm not seeing the lines right now, Sean. Oh, there they are.
Okay. So 13% of the US has access to more than 3 providers, which is important because we know that access to providers is an important element of competition, and that's what leads to quality increases and cost reductions. But for most of rural Arizona and for most of rural America, you don't have access to 3 providers. You're lucky if you have access to 1 provider. So part of what we do is open up that access to the middle mile. Well, why is it hard to get middle mile expansion? Well, because bridging to the residential customer is expensive. Running that wire out to everybody's home, and so in rural areas, sometimes it's hard to get your providers to want to come in because there's that cost issue. So what's the final mile? Well, the final mile is the provision of conduits for internet service to the customer, to the residents, to the students' homes, and to the homes of other communities. So, we have this need, and there's some questions here. As far as is that infrastructure going to be owned by the internet service provider, or is that going to be independent and open access? And there's a lot of people, nationwide. There's a lot of conversation about open access, and we've talked about that as a final mile committee, in terms of, okay, how do we, can we pursue an open access solution, which would basically be where you would have the infrastructure in public hands, and then the internet service provider's role would be minimized. Problem is that in Arizona's regulatory structures and political climate, that's really not the direction that things are headed. And so we're looking at a solution that is more focused on saying, okay, what what's the role of the anchor institution, which is going to, generally be a school district, and then the role of the consortium of school districts or anchor institutions. And then you also have the role of the ISP. And those three roles are kind of spelled out. And I don't know, Milan, you want to speak to that a little bit in terms of what the role of the school district is in all of this?
Sure.
Okay.
Today, we see the role of the school district is we will have them involved in the RFP process as far as selecting a vendor to make sure that it fulfills the needs of the community. And the other responsibility of the school district is defining the SIPA requirements for your educational content. So when we look at the Child Internet Protection Act, the FCC tells us that the school district, basically the board of the school district defines what your SIPA requirements are. You can either go with something defined by the state or your local district or your county. So we want to make sure that your local district outlines the SIPA requirements, and those are the requirements we use for your local area. So those are the big things. And the other things that the district's going to do is we want them to help with some of the infrastructure hard assets, such as being able to use the school facilities to mount an antenna. Also for the educational content, some of the smaller districts would want to use the school's internet connection and extend that out for the kids at home to use. If the providers want to use those same assets to sell commercial services, they would actually have to put in a separate ISP connection and that they would have to pay for separately, since we can't use federal funds to pay for commercial access. But all that's defined in the RFP that we have working through the legal process today. But that's about it.
Okay. Thank you. So it's a wonderfully simple concept and a wonderfully complex procedure. And that's where, on this map that you should be seeing on this slide, you can see where we have 6 areas, and then Pima was the 7th that was added after this slide was generated. But these are places where school districts have been able to identify the students that are in need, and then there was a survey that went out from Wes through the county superintendents. You should have seen that, and hopefully that's something that you can respond to, because this is sort of phase 1, and right now we're already in the process of building phase 2. The plan is to have phase 1 completed by the end of 2021, and then be ready to move forward. So we've been working through a lot of the questions, and as Milan mentioned, solidifying the roles of the districts, and so that way we've also been working with attorneys to figure out the best way to formalize the relationships in ways that protect the districts, because we know that the internet service providers are going to have some lawyers as well. So basically, like I said, the goal is, you create a consortium of anchors, and then you reach out to the households. Now I created this little map. Like I said, Pima has kind of been added since that last map, and the red households are your locations that don't have internet service. And so given the way that they're spread out across the valley along US 70, it's a simple matter, with 2 transmission stations to reach all those kids. The blue boundaries are at 7 miles, and then the yellow boundary is at 4 miles. The manufacturer has said that The system will work up to 7 miles. Actually, I think they said it'll even work further than that. But I mean, we've kind of said, okay, we're really confident that within 7 miles we can provide that robust service. And I said, okay, gosh, what does it look like if I even come down to 4? And so, but the other thing you can see is that all of those green households, those are student addresses. And those are student addresses that didn't say they don't have access to internet, but given access to an educational subscription that's a much more robust internet than what they are getting through their subscriber. And also it's internet that's protected, so it's going through a firewall. I would anticipate that there are probably a lot of those parents in those green households that would also want to take advantage of this service in terms of increasing, their children's ability to do schoolwork online. So that's part of the process that we're looking at here, as this goes forward and expands, goes down the road. So obviously the goal here is to address the homework gap. I'm sorry, did that map not show up?
Yeah, it's there.
It's there. Okay. Yeah, I guess the maps are taking a little while to load, or the last part of the slide that loads into the Zoom image. Maybe somebody understands how that works, but okay. So as a result, we want students to gain access to affordable internet. I was talking to a reporter about this yesterday, and he asked me, he says, well, now that face mask mandates are going away, and now that students are returning to in-person instruction, is this still an issue? And my response was, of course it's an issue, because we want teachers to be able to provide students with access to educational materials at home. We want to be able to extend the learning outside of the school, and we don't want there to be barriers for some students and not for others. I mean, that's why the homework gap is a gap, is because it doesn't affect everybody. And we wanted to erase that even before the pandemic. So how does it work? The long and short of it is that basically it's a hub and node technology system. You've got transmission stations, base stations, and then they broadcast over the citizens band radio system to receivers that are in the residences, and then the resident placed router takes that signal and converts it into a Wi-Fi signal that can be accessed by the student device or the home device in the home. And so that's the gist of it. One of the things that we also know about this, is that not all final miles are equal. I mean, just in the 7 projects that we've identified, you've got some that are, really broad. I mean, Holbrook, you're talking about lots of geography. Some have tons of trees and other geographical obstacles, and so we're working to address those. I don't know, Milan, if you wanted to speak to the technology anymore.
Well, the technology, CBRS technology, is not new. It's an LTE 5G type technology. And the thing is, when we put the RFPs out, we're not specifying any technology. If we can actually get them to build fiber to the home and do it with, as the best option for that specific area, then that's the solution that it'll be. So as far as what technology we use to deliver the service, as far as the final mile project, we really don't care. It could be CBRS, it could be any one of 5 or 6 different wireless technologies. It could be fiber, it could be a hybrid of the two. So, we don't know what it will end up being. We'll look at the RFP responses and attempt to make the best selection for that particular area. Since these, 6 or 7 projects are in very different parts of the state, different terrain, different geographic issues and problems. Chevron Butte, Forest Lakes is full of trees, thick trees, which makes wireless a challenge. There's also only 7 or 8 homes there. So that may make it to where, it may be fiber to the home, may be the cheapest solution. We don't know. So we'll wait and see. Are there any questions? I haven't seen any questions in the chat, or everyone's pretty quiet.
I've been monitoring and so far we haven't, but feel free to ask them, either unmute yourself or put them in the chat, that question about anything that they're speaking about, or things about your specific location and broadband access is fair game as well.
I see Beaver Creek is on the call. Karen and John. I think John, I know Scott. So Beaver Creek is a special case since there is no broadband access in the Beaver Creek School District today. So for you guys, it will either, well, we submitted for your broadband again this year, although it's about double what it was last year to build high-speed, to build fiber to the school. Hopefully, and this is a hope, not a plan, but it's a hope, we'll be able to have the fiber built about the same time that we build this network and have it all come up at the same time. If that doesn't work, then the plan will be to backhaul in a high-speed wireless link to handle the traffic, so that we can actually get high-speed access in there without having to use the school's access, because you guys have limited access today. So every situation is going to be a little bit different. So Beaver Creek's a little bit different from Pima, and Pima is different from Hackberry, and Hackberry is different from Holbrook. So everyone's a little different.
And that was by design, wasn't it, Milan? I mean,
absolutely.
You guys were looking to identify, the 7 initial sites. You didn't want them all to be the same, but we did want them to be representative of the rural, and so, hopefully, other rural superintendents will see, the potential in their district as they look at what's being done in these pilot districts.
And the main reason we did that on purpose. I mean, the whole reason we did that on purpose was to show that we can solve the internet disparity across the state of Arizona, no matter where you are. So, and we know it's not one solution fits all, but we want to show that we can solve the problem wherever the household may be, anywhere in the state. But we need to decide we're going to fix the problem first. $1.5 million is a very small piece, so it's not going to solve the problems of the whole state. However, it's going to show that we can solve problems in different parts of the state that have different problems, different issues, different areas. So once we do that, now we can go back to the state at the state level, legislator level, and the governor level, and say, hey, we can fix this wherever they may be located in the state. Okay, they may be down in the canyon, they may be in Havasupai, or they may be up on the rim, they may be in the desert areas in Cochise County. So wherever they may be, we've shown that yes, we can approach that particular problem and deal with it effectively by using the process we put together.
Absolutely. And as Milan's mentioned a couple times, there was an announcement by Superintendent Hoffman's office last Thursday about the $1.5 million in funding that ADE has provided for phase 1. But we also know that Congress has appropriated a large chunk of money for projects like this around the country. Much of that is going through the governor's office, and we've been in contact with the governor's office to talk about how this could work and how we can continue to step out with this. The nice thing is, we started this conversation early. In some ways, the vision was there even before the funding was available, and that's always a way to get out ahead, as opposed to those that are developing a vision based on the availability of funding. And so there's a ton of support right now coming out of the COVID response, and our goal is to use that to get things moving so that we can demonstrate effectiveness, and not just the educational effectiveness. I think one of the things that I know Milan and I have talked about a lot is this goes beyond just the ability to provide a quality education for rural kids. I mean, this includes providing a better quality of life in rural communities. There are lots of things that you can't do if you don't have access to the internet, both in terms of employment, in terms of commerce. And so if we can bring those opportunities to rural Arizona, we can really make a difference. So
Sean, you mentioned something about a reporter earlier, and they said that, we're going back to in-person learning and back to school and everything. This was a problem before the pandemic. The pandemic just let us put a light on it. And what it's done is it's put a light on the problem, and it's shown us that we have a problem. And if we get caught like this again, it's our fault. This time it's like, yeah, we got caught. We were having to teach from home. We weren't prepared. Now we know that this is a possibility. It could happen again. We should have looked forward and saw that it could happen. We didn't. But now we said, okay, we need to learn from the past, learn from mistakes. We weren't prepared. Now it's up to us to be prepared for the next time. Whether it happens again or not, we should be prepared. So now's our chance to get prepared, make sure that we have that access everywhere so we don't have to worry about this kind of problem. And it's going to enhance their lives at home too. So when the reporters ask, tell them we're preparing for the future no matter what.
Exactly. Well, and part of it too, as this slide, kind of demonstrated, there's, once you put that CRBS technology into a community, there's more to it than just what we're doing. You're bringing a tool in that has tremendous potential. We can contract out on the priority access licenses side of things, but the general authorized access side of it is a much broader opportunity. And so, there's definitely a lot of benefit to this economically as well as educationally, just moving things forward. I have often felt like there's a strong parallel between this and then the REA project and the New Deal, which is interesting when you look at all the conversations about the Green Deal right now. How do we envision the America of the mid 21st century? And I don't see how you can do it without having access to internet, and places that don't have access are going to find themselves left behind in much the same way that 70, 80, almost 100 years ago, if you didn't have electrification, you were left behind. So this is important. And then, actually that's kind of the last two slides are kind of from another presentation. So at this point, I hope that if people have questions, they'll open up. What do we got? Who's on the call?
If anyone has questions or comments, please feel free to unmute. We're a small enough group. Or use the chat if that's if that's your preference too.
Hi, this is Scott at Beaver Creek, and I apologize. I came in late to the webinar, so perhaps the timeline was already spoken of before. I feel like it's kind of a catch-22 with some of the technology you're referring to and rolling that out in a more broad sense. As Milan said, we're at Beaver Creek still waiting for that final mile, waiting for that fiber to finally connect to the school. And that seems like an awful lot of money to dump on a project that's going to be really practically obsolete as far as our need if this is being rolled out within, I don't know what the timeline is, 5 years or less.
Hey, Scott. So we're talking 1.5 million to do 6 different districts providing high-speed internet to the home for those students in those 6 districts. For you, we're talking, yours is like 1.5 million just to bring internet to your school. So we're talking, there's a couple of different subjects going on there. So broadband access to the school is one thing. Schools are the anchor institutions, and that's paid for with, you know, the E-rate funds and our state match program that we have going. And we started your school this year and then found out that our build costs were going to be almost double what was actually quoted. Canceled the project, put it back out for bid again, and Frank, your E-rate consultant's on the line with us, resubmitted it this year. So that's one phase of the program. The second phase is delivering high-speed internet to the home. So that's completely different than delivering internet to the school. Does that help clarify a little bit?
Thanks, Milan. That clears it.
Good. Now, timeline for this first phase of projects, these first 6 or 7. The RFP is in legal right now, legal review. As soon as it comes out of legal review, we'll release the RFP. It'll probably sit on the street for 45 days. And then we'll do the RFP review, which will take a week to 2 weeks, make the award, and then construction will be anywhere from 60 to 120 days. So I said, if we get the RFP back sometime in the next week or so, I suspect we should be finished with these first 7 projects by the end of this year, by the end of 2021. Which means we'll be finished in time to go to the legislature and say, hey, we need X million of dollars because we want to do the state. So that's our timeline in a very broad sense. I've got a Microsoft project plan that I put together to kind of lay everything out and all the parts and pieces, but that's a broad look at the plan today.
Good question, Scott. What other questions we got? What other thoughts do you have?
Well, I'll ask one. I know that you have 7 proof of concept districts that you're working with in this first phase. What are next steps for districts that might be interested in doing the same things, looking at becoming a project site? What happens for those districts?
Wes has been compiling that list. He sent out questionnaires to all of the county school superintendents, and he's received back responses from a bunch. I'm not even sure how many at this point, but we probably have 30 different school districts all over the state that have said, yes, we have a need, and yes, we want to participate, and yes, we need help. So as we start turning up some homes and we see some ribbon cuttings happening and we see some news reports of how wonderful the program is, it's going to start building our momentum. And I suspect that at that point, we're going to start looking a little bit further ahead saying, okay, we're going to have to put a application process in place to kind of control the flow and prioritize some of these districts and some of the areas of the state. Whether we keep doing it through the final mile project, I don't know. It may be that the counties want to take over themselves and the county school superintendents want to start running it from their level. I don't see the state running it because we have enough trouble running the E-rate program, which I run by myself. So we were very lucky to have the Arizona Rural Schools Association say, hey, this is something that needs to be done. Let's do it. So if the Rural Schools Association will keep it up, then,
So,
I really hope so.
so towards that kind of, the question of the governance structure of the project. One of the things that we're looking at is that, the best way to do this is through setting up a consortium. The Yavapai County ESA has a number of consortiums. We've kind of used some of that as models. And that from there, you basically have a group of public entities that are working together. And that kind of creates some of your ownership structure. And that's kind of the mechanism. The role of the Arizona Rural Schools Association has been, initially, like Milan mentioned, getting surveys out, gathering information, helping to get the word out, meeting with people from Kathy Hoffman's office, people from Doug Ducey's office, and trying to, kind of help them to understand what we're trying to do, as well as gathering questions about what it is that needs to be done, and putting all of that together. And so yeah, going forward, I mean, the goal is that this become an independent, consortia of school districts, and possibly other anchors. There are some parts of the state where your community colleges may be your best anchor, or the libraries may be the best anchor, depending on who has the best access. And the consortium is open to including them. But right now, we superintendents have good relationships. We know each other, and that's kind of where we've started with phase one. Phase, like Milan said, phase one hopefully will be complete by the end of the year, and I would say by that point, phase two will be to the RFP process, so that when we get to the spring, we have that next round of projects that are shovel ready, that are ready to roll. And if there's funding that the governor has access to through COVID relief, we can look at that again, with a goal that by the time we get to the fiscal year 23 budget, we can have a proposal in the governor's budget to get funding for phase three, and we're moving down the line. I think Scott made a good point. Are we going to be putting stuff in place that's already obsolete? And we've taken the sustainability question very seriously in our conversations, and I think we have some mechanisms built in, where the RFP, between the consortium, for the relationship between the consortium and the vendor, renews much the same way that your auditor relationship renews, or your food service management company, where you do an RFP. As long as you're happy, you can keep that same contract in place for up to 5 years, but eventually you do have to go back out and check the market to make sure that there isn't a better opportunity out there. So yeah.
Are there any other questions that anyone has for either Sean or Milan? I am not hearing any. Sean, Milan, any last words before we wrap it up for the day?
Nothing from me. I think everyone on the call has my cell phone number, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to call.
That's a dangerous thing to offer. They'll take you up on it.
That's okay. I get calls all times of the day and night, and if I'm not on a call, I accept calls, so it's all good.
All right. Sean, anything else before we let people get back to their daily grind?
no, I hope that, I know we were looking at the list of people looking to get in the room. We realized that this was going to be a lot of preaching to the choir as far as those in attendance, but we will take this, the recording of this, and we'll get it up on the ARSA website. We'll probably also put it up on, or a link to it, to the YouTube broadcast. We'll put that up on the Final Mile website as well. When you're talking to your colleagues, if they have questions, this can be a great resource to kind of cover some of the information. And then from there, they can always reach out to me or Milan or Melissa or Wes or, and we can answer the questions we can answer and move people towards the people that have the answers we don't have. So hopefully we can keep this moving. I think this is something that down the road can make a tremendous difference in the lives of students in rural Arizona. And I'm excited to be a part of that.
Yeah, as Robbie said, it's a game changer for rural education.
Yes, very much. So.
Well, Milan, I want to say thank you for being our guest today and for your expertise, and really appreciate all that you're doing, your efforts around the Final Mile project, as well as all that you do for E-rate for the state. We really appreciate you and your work.
Well, thank you. It's definitely my pleasure.
And with that, everyone, have a wonderful day. We are concluding. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.